Black perspectives haven't always been centered in the telling of America's story. Now, we're taking center stage. Introducing NPR's Black Stories, Black Truths, a collection of Black-led stories from NPR's podcasts. Search NPR Black Stories, Black Truths wherever you get your podcasts.
Support comes from Mercedes-Benz of Buckhead, where the power of electric meets the power of Mercedes. Introducing a lineup of electric vehicles, the EQB, the EQS sedan and SUV, the EQE sedan and SUV. The vehicles are all electric. The feeling is all Mercedes. Mercedesofbuckhead.com.
All right, welcome back to Political Breakfast this week. We are so glad you're here and listening on WABE. Democratic strategist Tharon Johnson is here, Republican strategist Brian Robinson here, and our producer Lily, all here today. Normally, I like to start and just ask how everybody's weekend was and have a few laughs here and there, but I don't know, I just can't do it today. I think we're all thinking about the student in Athens and what transpired late last week. The death of a UGA student ruled murder, and it just sent shockwaves through that community, through the UGA community, and here at home. So just kind of want to get your thoughts on that, because you both have ties to either Athens or UGA.
Yeah, that's right. And, the shockwaves, Lisa, actually go beyond our communities and our state border to the nation, because this is also playing into an ongoing national debate about the open border that we have and the implications that it has for cities all over the country, big and small, because Athens is not New York City, it's not Chicago, it's not Denver, the three most populated cities where many of these folks are flowing into. But it also shows how local policies matter when it comes to where these illegal migrants end up. Part of what you're hearing from Republicans this week is Athens has policies in place that make it a incentivized place to go if you're here illegally. The district attorney there, Deborah Gonzalez, has said that the repercussions of someone's immigration status should be taken into consideration when charging someone for a crime. And the sheriff's department has policies that would fall under the sanctuary city umbrella. The county commission there has passed resolutions that seem to welcome illegal migrants to stay in the community and to get access to the services that the city provides legal residents. And so I think what you're going to see beginning this week is a really strong push to counteract and to make sure that cities aren't able to have sanctuary city type policies. Sanctuary cities are illegal in Georgia already, but obviously there are some who are trying to get around that with their own local policies. And that's going to be number one. But number two is the reason why this guy was found was UGA put in security cameras. And so the security footage picked up someone. They were able to identify him, go into the community and ask around, say, hey, do you know this guy? And that's how they found him. So lots of lessons to be learned here, but there's going to be some changes coming out on the state level and maybe even on the national level. Governor Kemp was on Fox News Channel this weekend discussing this case, and that's because it's a national interest. A few weeks ago, we saw some migrants in New York City beating up some New York City police officers. When you have these cases, they're going to make national news because it fits into a national narrative and something that's going to be a major issue in the 2024 election.
Okay, well, let's quickly get Tharon in here. And Tharon, your ties to Athens runs deep. And just, how did that hit you personally first? And then, talk about the politics that are likely pending with the death of Laken Riley.
Well, the first thing I want to do is send my sincere condolences to Laken Hope Riley's family. This was a horrific murder, and I can not imagine what her family is thinking about. So I want to start by just, realizing that this was an unfortunate death. Now, where it occurred, who it allegedly occurred by, unfortunately, Lisa, in this time and age that we live in, you can't ignore the politics of it. Secondly, Brian knows this. I mean, where the murder happened is not far from where I grew up. My mom we came over to a little bit of money, and we moved to Davis Estates, which is right near South Milledge. And for UGA grads who or people from Athens who listen to this podcast, South Milledge, 5 Points area, Macon Highway, that whole little stretch is where I grew up. I remember walking to the intramural fields to watch practices and participate in sports. And so to think that this happened right down the street from where a lot of my family members still live, it's very concerning to me, and it's scary. And then the last thing I would say before we get into the politics of it, UGA in Athens is known as a town where you see, Lisa and Lily, so many students just running, like that's the way you kind of stay in shape. Of course, it keeps your mind fresh. And then just along that whole Macon Highway, Lumpkin, Baxter, Milledge, kind of that street that curves over where this murder happened. I mean, it is a known sort of running route for so many students. And so definitely the Athens community is shaken by this. Now let's get into the politics. I gotta commend a few leaders, but one that comes to mind is what Senator Jason Estevez said. We talk a lot about him on this podcast. He's Hispanic and African American, a friend of Brian and I's. We actually saw him this weekend at an event. And this was and I also want to compliment State Representative Will Wade, who I read his tweet. We've had him on the show before. He's from the Dawson County area, school board member. And these were two individuals, Democrat and Republican. Will Wade being a Republican, Jason being a Democrat. And I think they had, to me, a very strong but sensible approach to this. And that is, a murder occurred. It's horrific. And it occurred by someone who is not here legally. And I agree with Brian. I mean, hats off to UGA and Athens Clarke County Police Department as well for jumping quickly to find this suspect. But, when this happened and who it happened by, this is something that I'm not shocked on, that national Republicans and local Republicans like Governor Kemp are using this to further echo their narrative about what's going on at the border. And we have to call it a crisis, Lisa. I've called it a crisis on this show. What I would hope now happens is now the politicalization of this horrific murder, a young student, a woman lost her life, that Democrats and Republicans will now come together to work to either pass the bipartisan measure that we have in Congress right now, or once the tweeting is done and all the national, shows and the posturing is done, come together to deal with this border crisis, to make sure that someone like this suspect, who is now being alleged murderer of an innocent student who was just jogging, make sure that not those type of people are coming into this country. And if they are here, because we can't ignore the fact, Lisa, I mean, we have a lot of people who are undocumented and who are not here legally, then let's make sure that the local authorities are working with the state and the federal government to make sure that these folks are identified. And if they don't want to abide by the law, or they break the laws, or they don't want a pathway to citizenship, then we need to deal with it. And I think that's what Democrats have got to be very strong about. And then we can't allow some Republicans, not all, because I mentioned Will Wade. I want to compliment him because he didn't take the bait, but he still feels very strongly about this immigration crisis that we're having in the country. But yeah, let's Democrats and Republicans come together to not just let this be a 1 week or 1 month politicalization of a death, but to really come together to figure out some sensible bipartisan legislation to make sure that we keep these type of people out of our country.
Yeah, Tharon, you talk about Democrats and Republicans coming together, but Governor Kemp talked about Riley's death in a statement, and he used it as an opportunity to attack Biden and place blame on the Biden-Harris administration and their immigration policies. Brian, do you think that's fair at this juncture?
I do. And I want to take you behind the curtain just a little bit on what was happening in the Republican leadership circles in the state on Friday night, because I was sitting on my couch communicating with a lot of folks as we were talking about the messaging coming out of this. And of course, there was first great sensitivity to the Riley family. That was number one. Like, before we go out there and say anything that has to do with policy issues and the government response to this, let's give this family a moment to get their feet under them and to grieve and to deal with the shock of this sudden violent loss to a beloved daughter and friend. And there was also a real reticence to rush to judgment. You didn't see people coming out making strident comments immediately in the wake of this. I saw Republicans taking look, this could be a very explosive issue. Let's go out there and make sure that we have all of the facts first. So I saw a real studious approach to this, not one that was jumping towards sensationalism immediately. And I think that has helped us get to Monday of this week with a little calmer minds. Now, Governor Kemp has been talking about this immigration issue. This quote, "We're all border states now," is the soundbite that he goes back to for some time now. He went to Texas recently. He has sent National Guard troops to the border. Those folks, from what I understand, are helping with some of the technology, some of the surveillance issues that they're dealing with that allows Texas authorities to be the men on the ground and frees up resources there. So from what I understand, it's not a huge number of people, but it is a meaningful number of people given the jobs that they're doing. This is going to be one of the top issues for the American election in 2024. The economy still remains number one, but immigration is really far up there. And I think, of course, that the negatives on Biden and Trump are also huge issues, whether you think President Trump is saying, whether you think Joe Biden has senility, those issues matter too. But when it comes to the substantive issues, immigration is going to be big. Is Republicans stepping away from the immigration deal in Congress going to blunt the impact of this issue for Republicans? Because this is a winning issue for Republicans. Joe Biden allowed the problem to get worse. They were so opposed to Trump's policies that they went too far the other direction, and it created this problem. And Democrats were getting blamed for that, as they should. But I wonder if Republicans have taken some of the edge off of their attack by not dealing with the legislation pending in Congress right now.
Ever wondered where to find the best dumplings in town? Curious about Atlanta's obsession with lemon pepper? Join us on Savory Stories, a new podcast as we uncover the untold tales behind Atlanta's culinary scene. From the roots of your favorite dishes to the creators that bring them to life, we're diving deep into the heart of the city's food culture. Listen to Savory Stories at wabe.org/podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts.
WABE.
Sounds Like ATL is a music documentary series that takes an in-depth look at the artists amplifying Atlanta's famed music community. Built around a desire to highlight Atlanta's diverse and world-renowned music scene, each episode features unforgettable, intimate musical performances by fresh new musical guests, each with exclusive interviews about the stories behind their music. Listen to Sounds Like ATL Saturday evenings at 7 on WABE and WABE.org.
Tharon, what are your thoughts on some pushback here? Was it fair for Governor Kemp to call out the Biden administration in this particular instance?
I know the governor and First Lady Marty Kemp approached this the way that many of us did. First and foremost, with us being Athenians, this happened in our backyard, literally. Him being a UGA grad and knowing how much he cares about his three girls. So he immediately thought about, it as a father and as an Athenian. And then the politics sort of entered. And let's give the governor some credit. He has been talking about this border crisis and immigration before this incident, this murder. And we've got to call it what it is. It was a murder, not an incident. Mm-hmm. So what this did, Lisa, is that it only amplified the governor to be put more in the spotlight. Now, what was interesting to me is that the rhetoric, the tone, the words that were used, and to now shift it to the president and try to lay blame completely at his feet was a different sort of approach to this. And again, I think that the governor understands that this is politics for him, but also I think that the governor also understands that you cannot blame every single thing, 100% of this on the president, because as Brian has talked about, there is a bill in Congress right now that the Republicans refuse to pass. Trump is on the record for saying that I do not want to pass this bill because it gives the opposing party leverage. It gives them momentum. It gives them some success on this issue. And so there's a little bit of hypocrisy here. I'm not saying that the governor is being hypocritical, let me be very clear, but it's like I think that we can redirect the blame a little bit and really make sure that you're holding everyone accountable. Now, the other thing that I found out since our last show, Lisa, is that not every Hispanic and Latino leader is fully in love with the bipartisan measure, right? But this is what they tell me. We like it more than what the Republicans have given us, because what the Republicans have proposed are nothing near than what's sitting there. So there's still a lot of work for both parties to do in the community. And then lastly, look, it happened, and I refuse to come at this strictly for partisan political reasons. But as Brian will remind me, this is a political podcast. I just think that we've got to let this family mourn, and we got to make sure that we understand this. There are good people who want to come to this country for the right reasons. But unfortunately, this was a man who came to this country for the wrong reason, and it resulted into a innocent student losing their life at the hands of a murder. Now, what went into his thinking, how it happened, why was Laken Hope Riley targeted by this particular individual? We will find that out. But ultimately, do we now go and find out more people like this suspect and make sure that they are not sitting in the wings or waiting to do another horrific murder like that? This is where I think Democrats have got to be strong. If you're not here to try to work and provide for your family and trying to seek a pathway to citizenship that's legal, but if you're doing things like this, I think it was also read that his brother had been arrested for a fake green card, had worked on the UGA campus. Keep me honest there, Brian. I think that's still ongoing with UGA. I think UGA reported that. Those type of bad actors need to be captured and they need to be removed from this country. But don't let this overshadow what I truly believe. There are people that are here that want to do the right thing, that want to work, that want to have their families here, that want a better way of life. But unfortunately, this murder overshadows that right now.
26-year-old Jose Ibarra is his name. Brian, go ahead.
Well, I think anytime you have a large number of men between the ages of 18 and 39 flowing into the country with little to do, they don't have jobs, they don't necessarily have housing, that is a recipe for disaster. And we're seeing that play out with the violence in New York City, and we're seeing it play out now in Athens, tragically. Mm-hmm. And Tharon's right. I am not one to demonize every person that comes over, because some of them are picking blueberries. And we
shouldn't. Right. And we shouldn't.
Some are picking blueberries in South Georgia. Some are painting houses and cutting lawns in metro Atlanta. Some are probably starting small businesses somewhere. There's a spectrum of folks.
Some are at my house right now.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, let's keep it real.
Yeah. I don't check for green cards for sure when they come to my house. The problem that we face is that we don't know who is here, and that is, I think, the underlying legal issue.
Yeah.
I was watching TV Sunday night, and it was national news cameras sitting there on the border, and it was a straight long line of Chinese nationals coming through the barbed wire. Why are they here? Are they coming for opportunity, or are they coming as plants for the Chinese Communist Party? Is it crazy to think that the Chinese Communist Party, which has such control of its population, would be sending people here and gathering intelligence, perhaps subverting us in some way? Is that crazy? No, it's not crazy. We're seeing tens of thousands of Russians cross the line. Some are fleeing Putin's oppression. Some are fleeing the draft in Russia. Some are being sent by Russia to cause problems in this country, to sow dissent. We've seen how they do that with social media. And I don't think that these folks from South America and Central America are part of some national plot, like it may be the case with Russia and China. But when Donald Trump and others say that these countries, some of whom hate us, at least their leaders hate us, some of them are emptying their jails and mental institutions, which are very expensive to maintain, and sending them here. And those folks have lived through trauma. They have violent backgrounds. And when they get here, that doesn't change. They don't all of a sudden become good citizens who are out in the workforce. Mm-hmm. They become folks like the guy from Venezuela who killed an innocent young woman who was doing everything right in life, studying hard, going to be a nurse to serve her state and her community in the healthcare sector, out there running, staying healthy, doing all the right things, and had her life snuffed out. We've got to protect Georgians from folks like this.
Hey, Lisa, it's just fate. And I'm sorry to jump in here, but and I don't think she'd mind me saying her name. And B-Rob knows this. Look, I own homes in Athens, and I keep up with my fellow Athenians. And you may know this woman, but Carol Williams is a white female, very respected family. Is a realtor who I work with in Athens. And this is the text message she just sent me. She said, "Tharon, we in the Athens community and beyond is shaken by the murder last week. We must pursue all details. And as angry as I am about what some in both parties are saying about the politics of this, I can't help but think about the family and what we in the Athens community have got to come together to work on this issue." She said, "As always, I appreciate all you do. Let me know if I can ever be assistance with you." See, where I'm trying to shift this a little bit, Lisa, is Brian is right. We cannot ignore the politics. And let me just say this. This is I hate to even say this, but this is an issue that came at a time, not a good time, because any murder is not a good time. Right. But it came at a time where the governor, the president, and let's not leave out Congressman Matt Collins, who I think, Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, issued a even stronger, if not stronger, comment, went to Twitter right away, just going off on the local Athens, Clark County Department, Police Department, didn't really bash UGA. And so I think we need more Carol Williams of the world, right? We need more people out here that, even though they understand the politics of it, is how do we come together as a community? And I made this bold prediction. This is where I want my hometown to stand up and represent. Brian heard me talk about this. Athens is very tolerable when it comes to racism, but it does exist. And I always talk about how there's three Athens. There's the poor Athens, there's the middle class Athens, and then there's UGA, right? And so now UGA, middle class and poor Athens, me, Carol Williams, and Governor Kemp, need to come together and figure out how do we, in a sensible way, point blame where blame is deserved, but how can we make sure that if there's anyone else in that Athens community, like this suspect, that's illegally there and that's out to commit murders, how do we capture that man or woman? That's the type of thing that I think Democrats have got to not be afraid of. And we want to do it legally. We don't want to infringe on anybody's right. We don't want to go start rounding up illegals in your pickup truck in Athens. But this murder has shaken this community. Yeah. And I predict that Athens will never be the same after this.
Yeah, because this guy was picked up, just because, we would not know this, unless this happened. And, security cameras, I believe, are in place. And I don't know, you two know this area. It's a heavily wooded area, correct, on the campus there. Can you describe it for us? Because Lily and I were just, thinking about that. And, Lily was closer to college days than all of us. And just, how frightening it was.
The intramural fields abut the loop, the road that goes around Athens. And there's parking, there's a bunch of athletic fields, and then there's a Lake Herrick. And then on the other side of Lake Herrick from the fields is a wooded area that is between the lake and the highway. And so it is isolated despite being so close to a place where there would be lots of people. On the other side of the lake, you wouldn't necessarily hear someone's screams. You wouldn't hear an attack taking place. Now, part of the reason why this guy was caught was it is isolated, but you have to walk directly back into civilization to get away from, you got to get back out there onto East Campus Road or to College Station Road, one or the other, and the cameras were able to catch him as he was exiting. But it is isolated. It is some place where you could hide, even though it is surrounded by the campus on at least one side of it.
Well, and Brian did a fantastic job of explaining the area, but just to kind of take our listeners into a little bit more, the University of Georgia is in a very unique sort of geographical position. If you live on the east side, you travel west. It's right when you go up to College Station Road, that Barnett Shoals Road, and a lot of students live along that area. And then if you go west, where the intramural fields are, and that's park that Brian talked about. It's where people like, we grew up, right? It's where former Congressman John Barrow lives. It's from, like, if you're a college professor or if you're a retired doctor. Athens was noted just a couple of years ago as the best place to retire. And so, the community is not unheard of, Lisa, for a student to take a morning jog, whether it's 5 a.m. or whether it's 11:15 a.m. But, it goes back to what Brian was saying is that, shout out to the Athens Clarke County Police Department and the University of Georgia and others for having the camera footage. And thank you for all the women and men who worked swiftly to capture the suspect. And so can you only imagine what the students are thinking right now? I mean, I can only imagine them not wanting to not walk anywhere or run anywhere alone. And now it's left up to the community in Athens and UGA to come together to bring some type of calmness, but at the same time honoring this precious life that we lost.
Yeah, they're calling it was a crime of opportunity, and so sad, so sad. We speak her name today, Laken Hope Riley. Laken Hope Riley, our hearts go out to her family, the tragedy and the sadness this has caused them. Thank you both for your insight on today's Political Breakfast. We'll do it again soon.